Retail Podcast, a global conversation hosted by Alex Resvan Viennet.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I hope it is a good Friday for you and it has been a great week for you. As always, a quick look at today's subject, who is the customer, plus 4 other things that I think are interesting and noteworthy. So let's get straight into it. So for those who are listening via the podcast, there is this great, and I'll link it in the show notes, great piece of work by the Visual Capitalist that was released last year that looked at the generations within the US and who actually has power, which is a really interesting concept because some of the experts, pundits out there would have you to believe that metaverse and digital commerce is here right now, and you've got to, you're already behind the curve. There is some truth to that, but let's just take a look at the data that we have, the data that they have visualized, which I think is super interesting. So what you can see, and again, for those listening, what I'll describe is that there are the 3 main, let's say, cohort of customer spend or consumer spend. You've got the baby boomers who are 55 and above. You've got the Gen X, which is 41 and above, and the millennials who start at 25. And then you've got the Gen Zs and alphas, but they only represent, in terms of spending power, 3.7%. And obviously alphas are 8 years old right now. But and this is the interesting part. A lot of the commentary out there is the fact that the alphas and the Gen Zs are going to require these experiences right now, but we've got some time. We've got about 5 years until they're in the consumer marketplace, and also you've got a little bit of time because you actually have to understand who your customers are. So, do we really understand who our customers are, in the sense of when we're building these experiences or when retailers are building experiences for these consumers, what are the inflection points? And that's, again, another, when you look at the inflection points between the generations, in the visual diagram that I'm sharing, you can see that it says the silent generation. That's obviously 65, the retirees, people who potentially have some form of spending power, but their purchasing power is declining. The baby boomers, which have had a great run in things, there is now an inflection point coming between the baby boomers and the Gen X's. And I think where people get this wrong, and I think in retail specifically, is those inflection points have become sort of people, maybe, I don't know, I wouldn't want to say they ignore them, but they're not aware of them. And they're not aware of them because they've not looked at the data, and they've not looked at the data because what data do they have to look at, right? What do retailers really have to look at, apart from, and this is why there's that great divide between marketing and technology and merchandising and operations, because they all have their own data sets, and maybe 1 or 2 retailers out there have managed to combine them all. But the first thing your data will tell you that it's not post records, historical till receipts, which is up to now being the staple of many of the data sets that people have used, is these inflection points that are happening, the up curve, that as that trend is coming in. And so let's take the metaverse right now as the uptrend. So we can see that and we've discussed this before, in terms of the way that the younger generations are consuming content. So whether in the stream, so live commerce, or maybe they don't watch traditional TV anymore. They only watch YouTube or Netflix or whatever else. Amazon Prime, I don't want to miss anyone, right? So whatever they're watching and however they're consuming it is via an app. So yeah, we can agree that and for those of you who may have some gray hair, or have been around a while, you'll notice that this whole app first or digital first or physical first, they've all been cycles. And so what I think the cycle that we're seeing is that app first cycle is coming into its own, because that's where the consumer of tomorrow is today. So it's an important point. The consumer of tomorrow is there today, but do you ignore today's consumer and build to that, or do you somehow build what, in my mind, is the right approach, a hybrid, right? Or whatever you're building online is a direct reflection offline. And then again, you'll see this great polar divide between physical experiences and digital experience, where the retailer may have a wonderful in-store experience, and you go up Fifth Avenue in New York, you go to any of these high street flagship stores and you get these wonderful experiences, and then you turn to digital and it falls apart. Or you look at their Instagram feeds and it's really lovely, but when it comes into the physical store, and I've shared this research before, where the research actually shows the digital reflexes that people have and the way that they are interacting online. If you have a bad experience online, you're less likely to go in and have a physical experience with that brand, because they've just not given you what you want. So if you see me in my day job, you'll probably see this presentation, and the presentation is titled "The Yellow Brick Road to the Metaverse," because again, it's this sort of, the metaverse will save all. Well, let's unpack that. And I'm not going to unpack that. John Radoff, he created two slides that when I saw them, I just thought, herein lies, when people talk about things and they sort of make this statement that it's this metaverse one thing, you actually have to sort of break that down into its component. And I think John Radoff does you can look him up, a game designer, has a whole bunch of content out there. But he talks about the 7 layers of the metaverse. And one of the things that really close to my heart, and I will talk about in a deeper way, is the creator economy. We do live in a creative economy, which is, if you like, the extension from all the other things that we've seen, from the gig economy, the experiential economy, and it's just continued to manifest. But the metaverse, or this digital verse, where gaming, shopping, networks, Web3, spatial engines, edge computing, mobile phones, or goggles, they all come together, and obviously powered by some form of infrastructure and network. But who wants to talk about the network and the technology side? But you see, they are all the components of this new verse, or Web 3.0. Well, obviously Web 3.0 in itself is a different thing, and I'm not going to, based on the time that we have together, I'm not going to get into that. But let's unpack that even further. And this is where John's done a great job at breaking it down into, and you may have already heard this, there's all of the gaming stuff that's going on, and whether that's Nintendo, Xbox, PlayStation, Fortnite, Roblox, there is a whole ecosystem out there, which actually led into, and some of you may know I'm involved in the fashion and esports side of things. And up till last year, everyone was like, oh, we need to do something esports, which all that really meant is we need to do something that's relevant in a digital space, in the way that our consumer of tomorrow is consuming or creating relationships with brands. And so the experience side of that will just continue to grow, and we'll continue to see new things and new forms of technology and consumption within that world. That experience then moves into discovery. Where are you going to find that? And some of the places that you can imagine, and that's why Facebook has invested heavily, rightly or wrongly, into their Meta and Metaverse. But Oculus is one of the best selling devices. I think around 10 million or so devices out there. Although, please don't quote me on that, because I don't know if that's actually correct. But you see that the discovery element, and I think Jack Dorsey from Twitter a few years back discussed how the platform and the evolution of social media is the evolution of our conversations, how you and I are talking and how we're talking to each other. And that generational move from paper, pen, to telegram, to telephone, to analog, to digital, to pictures, to videos, has been the evolution of commerce. And now we've got a new form factor. And if you were lucky enough to go to CES, you would see that all of the new technologies that are being created and ready for release in 2024 will actually break our illusions of what we have to put something on that blocks our vision and go into this verse. They actually become And Ray-Ban have released their things. You had the Snapchat goggles. You had Google Lens before that. So anyway, discovery becomes a great component. You then have the creator economy, which is the thing for me that excites me the most, because that's where the market growth and opportunity is in creating the startups and unicorns of tomorrow. I'm not going to go through it, but I'll just highlight what's on the slide for the people who are listening. You then have spatial computing, decentralization of the infrastructure, again, whole mass topics that we can talk about. We have the interfaces that I was talking about, the human interfaces, whether that's goggles or computers or mobile phones, and then you have the infrastructure. So it's a great slide. I'll put it in the show notes. I think it does a great job at highlighting some of the challenges that people have, and specifically retailers when they're going into this world, on what are they going to build and how are they going to build it. If you want to read something now, Snow Crash, I've got it on Audible, and oh my, I think I was at university when I read it, but anyway, I downloaded the Audible file, and it is if it almost feels I'm listening to it on an 8-track or a tape, which is wonderful because it sort of takes you back. And I've had people love or hate it, but ultimately it is the first book that refers to the metaverse, and in that metaverse, it is a single metaverse that you enter, and there's a backstory. And if you want to read it, I'll let you go. And obviously, Ready Player One, Hollywood movie, great blockbuster, great thing on the 80s for everyone else. In other news, so we're coming towards the end. For those thinking, how long is this guy going to be talking for? 15 minutes. I've got 2 minutes left. Louis Vuitton have, for as far as I can see, created the world's largest pop-up store. But to be fair, it's in Dubai. If you're in Dubai and have the time, have a go along and view. And what they're trying to do is obviously create these sort of, and unfortunately from my cynical perspective, when I look at this, I think beautiful, lovely product, great marketing, lots of experiential stuff. But when you go into it, and some of the imagery behind this is, the massive screens that create some form of connection. I think in my world, that's a little bit lazy. Just expecting a screen to do the thing. Obviously, you can QR code check in. There's a whole, it's a museum as well inside there. So there's a whole history in there. So I don't want to do it any disjustice. But I think in this new physical, digital, connected world, and if you were lucky enough to see the Dolby experience in Soho, I can't remember, 2018, 19, for me, that was one of the best immersive digital to physical experiences. You didn't even know that they were selling headphones when you went in there, because everywhere you went was some form of delight. And again, that was a very rare experience, but probably one of the best retail experiences I've had. And in final news, let's leave it on I think it's the final news. Let me just check. Okay, we've got two more components. Colin versus Cuthbert. In the UK, we had a massive, and I think the reason I mentioned this was because this has a link to NFTs and the future of IP. Again, two big topics, but we had this whole thing in the UK where Marks and Spencer's had a children's cake, or maybe anyone's cake, where it was a caterpillar, and the low-cost rival created Cuthbert the caterpillar, almost the same, identical packaging, same look as the item itself, and it went to court. And it went to court last year, and it was just settled earlier this month. Which we don't know what the settlement was, but both parties are very happy, and both caterpillars will remain in the ecosystem. What's really interesting is that Marks and Spencer's here in the UK has decided to go one up, right? Yes, you may disrupt my price. Yes, you may copy my product, but I'm going to personalize this, and I'm going to personalize it by bringing some form of, bring yourself into the cake. So here, the cake messaging can be personalized to, and in this instance that I'm sharing, it says happy retirement, which is really cool. And that's really where retailers are trying to fight back. But wouldn't it be interesting if there were, NFTs in the retail world that linked to their physical products and brands? And you've seen some experimentation with the luxury brands, but would it work in all day or common day brands? So anyway, they've resolved it. Both parties seem to be really happy, and the consumer is happy because they can have access to the cakes, chocolate cake. If you ever want to buy me cake, anyone out there. And in the final elements of this, I just wanted to go give you some food for thought in terms of providing feedback and looking at potentially where you want me to focus and where some of the topics that we can cover. Physical stores, meta commerce, live commerce, pre-loved and circular, purpose-driven commerce, technology-driven commerce, and then e-commerce, a whole bunch of commerce. And maybe the episode could be the new world commerce. But let me know your thoughts on which one of these areas you would like me to focus on. And with that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, as I used to always struggle to come back to full picture. Ta-da! Have a wonderful Friday. Let me know your thoughts. Please do leave a rating if you're listening via Apple Podcasts, or leave a comment if you're listening via Pandora or any of the other areas, or you can contact me directly via LinkedIn. With that, thank you very much.
The Retail Podcast, a global conversation hosted by Alex Resvan,